The Lute and the Glove, written by Katherine Wigmore Eyre. Read by The Wrathful Proser. A damp November dusk was closing in on London. In Harley Street, where lamps were lighted and curtains drawn, a door from the foyer of Sir Roger Cameron's consulting rooms opened, and a tall young woman walked down fog-wet, soot-smeared marble steps to a waiting taxi. She was too thin in her cinnamon-colored suit and soft furs. The shadows under her gray, dark-browed eyes were stained against the drained whiteness of her face. Her burnished, coppery red hair, drawn back from a center part and caught with a tortoiseshell pins in a thick chignon, was a bright, dragging weight at the nape of her slim neck. There was a faint reek of brandy on her breath as she spoke to the cab driver. "Brown's Hotel, the Dover Street entrance, please." Sir Roger, at the end of an hour-long appointment, had gotten up from his desk to open a mahogany cellaret and unstopper a decanter. "You can do with a drop of this, I fancy, Miss Carey," he had observed quietly. "I know how difficult our talks are, but you are feeling a bit more fit, aren't you? Getting some sleep? Eating a little? Well then, it's time to start the real work. It's going to be up to you, you know, and I want you to get at it directly. Remember, everything down on paper, everything. There are to be no omissions, no reservations, no inhibitions. And shall we see each other next week? What about Wednesday? Take my word for it, there'll be a great deal off your mind by that time." 1. Brown's London. Carey Reach. My house in Devon. My house with an octagon room. My house set in a tangled garden where birds sing, and where, beyond the beech trees and elms, a blue sea, blue as a pair of remembered eyes, laps on the white pebbles of a half-moon cove. And shall I ever forget what happened there in my house last summer? Shall I ever forget the chill that struck me, the bone-deep chill, and the sweat that broke out on my palms that day when I stood transfixed, staring through thick, shifting shadows, and saw for the first time what I saw? Because I did see it, beyond any doubt, beyond anyone's power to persuade me to the contrary. It was far too real to have been an illusion or a hallucination, too real to have been a trick of the eye, a distortion of vision, or a refraction. But when I say that, do I only prove myself as deranged as I have feared these past tormented months? And does it follow then that Sir Roger has lied to me? No, a doctor wouldn't lie, not about insanity. He would have put me away. Instead, he gave me his word of honor that I am not mad and that I shan't let myself doubt him. I can't, not now. Not with everything in the world I long for at stake. He's got to have told the truth. And I am praying, too, that he is right when he insists that to put everything down, to pour it all out on paper, will act as a purge. But can it ever help me to look objectively, impersonally, at the extraordinary experiences of last summer? Sir Roger has urged something else as well. I am to look up the word retrocognition in the Britannica, for what it's worth, as he puts it, and then I am to hold fast, to grip with all my might to the comforting and undeniable fact that case history after case history has been recorded of people like myself, entirely rational people who appear to have been used as an inexplicably and unwillingly and wretchedly as I for a medium by which the apparently never dead past tried desperately to link itself with the present. The never dead. A horrible phrase when one knows what it can mean. How can I ever say how grateful I am for the reassurance of this quiet bedroom where I am writing, for the coal fire sputtering so cheerfully behind its brass fender, for the blessed everydayness, the down-to-earthness of the very solid, very English hotel dinner that has just been served to me, for sherry and cold soup, turbot and a cut-off-the-joint, Brussels sprouts, cold shape and fish paste savory. I ate it all because I've been ordered to eat with sensible obedience, and that in itself speaks. I long to believe of my return to a normal existence. An existence so long lost, so dreadfully lost to me. And now, for the first time since Sir Roger asked it, I feel able to at least try to write down my incredible recollections of last summer. It won't be easy. Sir Roger knows that I couldn't possibly attempt it if I had not begun to eat again and to rediscover what sleep is. Sleep, a thing that, until so lately, many ghosts and forms of fright have driven mine eyes away. But I must begin at the beginning for me at least. And it all started in San Francisco on the 16th of last June. It was the day of my father's funeral. Only one car had gone out to the cemetery that morning. Father's lawyer and a minister sat beside me in the black limousine that followed the hearse. Wang, our Chinese cook, was in front with the driver, his very clean hands looking unfamiliar to me without a paring knife in them or a pastry tube. Father's death has been entirely unexpected. Inside of an hour, there I was, left. And aside from my sense of loss or grief, I found it an upsetting, detached, hanging in space feeling to so suddenly know myself alone in the world, completely alone. My mother had died when I was 7 years old, and after that, Father had been my world. Father who, when I was little, had not always found time for me. Father who had conscientiously provided a reliable nursemaid to see that I bathed, ate prunes, and drank orange juice, and said my prayers, and learned my manners, and then who had turned his back on everything but English literature and his writing and research. Eventually, he became what lecture programs and publisher blurbs hailed as an authority on the English Renaissance. There wasn't anything he didn't know about its prose and poetry, its drama and music and philosophy. From a financial standpoint, his learning was not too rewarding, but thanks to my mother, Father had always had more money than the usual professor. Money that would be mine now. Money that would let me do exactly as I choose with my life. But what did I want to do with it? I tried to decide on the evening of that difficult, dreary 16th of June. I knew that I must begin at once to plan something, or I could not bear the aloneness. I was sitting at the piano in the living room of our comfortable house that overlooked the Presidio and the Golden Gate. Idly, I played a few bars, but after a moment, I closed the lid of the piano. I had lost heart for playing. The sound of it echoing in a house so much emptier than it had only been 3 days ago depressed me more than ever. After all, Father and I had been close in a way, the last few years. Close because I had made a project of it. I wandered into his library and stood by his desk. I picked up his pen. I couldn't believe he was gone. What focus would I have for my days now? No one could have felt more adrift, less oriented to the future than I, as I asked that. But suddenly, and very clearly, the answer dawned on me. Why, I could go to Carey Reach, at last, to an old stone manor house in Devon, that for 20 years I had been longing to see. A house that in some curious, intangible way had been a part of my life, my secret life, since I was 8 years old. A house that had belonged to Careys for almost 5 centuries. The Carey name marks us of West Country stock as certainly as would Seymour or Coffin or Cooey or Hawkins or Courtenay. And even though Father's branch of the family left Devonshire 2 generations ago, he had always felt in his roots were still there, that he had passed on the same feeling to me. He used to say that people were only what they had been. I never forget that, and I have thought of what it meant 100 times lately. When I was a child, and Father first told me about Carey Reach, on one of those rare occasions when he had a few moments to give me, he explained that reach meant vista or expanse. And even then I could see, or thought I could see, the garden and the fields and the water that stretched away beyond the house. I was hugely disappointed, however, to learn that so romantic sounding a place as a Tudor mansion house could be towerless, moatless, and without a single dungeon. But as I grew older, I understood that Carey Reach had been built with no more pretentious design no more belligerent purpose than to serve as a peaceful, agreeable home for quiet people of some means and taste and of a certain position of their world. Later, I knew that Carey Reach was shabby and neglected and empty. A wonder even that it stood still. In World War II, a near bomb hit that cratered its field and shattered its windows and brought down the whole ceiling of plaster. And when the war was over, there were no Careys left to live in it. No English Careys, that is. The last of them had been an old retired admiral, a widower without children. When he died, a London law firm notified father that he had inherited Carey Reach, along with the farmlands and the orchard that still remained of the family's original holdings. Should they sell it? Good prices were being paid for country properties, but father turned down their suggestion. He told them to lease out the farms, and he sent over a large check to patch up the house. And then, rather than see it go out of Carey hands, he had sentimentally paid for its nominal upkeep the past 10 years. Now, like everything else of father's, it was mine, and no one would keep me from seeing it whenever I choose. No one, because there was no one. And when it came to doing what one wanted, it made a difference, being alone. A very big difference. Quickly, guiltily, with that realization, I told myself that father had never intentionally kept me away from Carey Reach. He hadn't known how much I longed to see the place, as he had always been so busy. Busy? Yes, but with plans of his own. Those invariably came first, before anyone else's. But now, whatever plans were made would be my own for a change. I felt guilty again saying this to myself, but I badly needed to justify the resentment that had flared in me all at once. There was really no justification. None. Father had simply been father, darling father, but someone to take you as you found him. There was something else, too, that would need justification. The immediate visit I was going to make to Carey Reach. A visit I determined in a flash decision to make the minute I could get away. The minute I could renew my passport and buy a plane ticket. I was still holding father's pen. Slowly, my eyes strayed from it to a stack of typewritten papers piled high on his desk. Pages I myself had typed up for father. His latest manuscript. He had been working on it when he died, and its last 4 chapters, only roughly outlined, would have to be completed before the final volume of a particularly brilliant series, The Tudor World, could take its place with all the other scholarly books to father's credit. I reached out and touched the stack. I was glad that father had not known he was going to die. He would have hated leaving his work unfinished. Father, who was so wrapped up in it, so boundlessly ambitious. And how would it be, how would it turn out, if I myself tried my hand, tried to see the last volume through? What if I took the manuscript to Carey Reach with me? There was a justification made to order, with London only a few hours' drive away, and the London Library where father had already made so many notes. But would I dare go on with those outlined chapters so make up to father? A little bit for that flare of resentment that had been as inexcusable as it had been unexpected? Why not? I had been father's secretary for years, hadn't I? And a critic whose judgment he respected and whose approval he valued? Anne Carey, her father's right hand. I was little else in people's eyes. I reflected as I stood there by the littered desk, already tentative, turning a page or two of the manuscript. A quiet, self-contained girl who had never gone away to college or married or established herself in an apartment on Telegraph Hill with a gay roommate or two. Why? Was it all father's fault that my girlhood had been somehow sapped? Somehow, a lonely child had been forced to learn too early a hard fact. If she were to have any parent at all, she must sacrifice everything else to pry her eventual way into that beautiful clamped shut shell that he had built around himself. Yes, primarily, but I had been content enough, had I not, with the book-loving, piano-playing days that had slipped by so quickly, And wasn't it only rarely, vaguely, that I had ever wondered what it was, if anything, that I might possibly be missing? I was deeply ashamed that depressed and introspective June evening to have let even a shadow of criticism across my mind. Again, I told myself that father had simply been father, and what had come over me here in his library, where he ought to have been, with his pen in his own hand instead of mine? Why rebellion this late? Was it because a house in a faraway Devonshire was suddenly and for no reason tugging at me harder and more insistently than ever? Could I have seen it years ago? Probably, if I had cared enough to make an issue out of it, given in to the strange attraction it held for me, as I was giving in now. For father had promised time after time to show it to me. We had always been in England several times together, and always, this trip, we were going to take a car and drive down to Devon so that I might catch a glimpse of Carey Reach. But the plan never came to anything. Father postponed it and postponed it. There were reunions with friends of his postgraduate Oxford days, lectures to give, honorary degrees to take, with father looking distinguished in a blue hood or a red or a black, slashed with purple. He spent days and days in various bookshops and in museums and libraries, with me jotting down reference material in shorthand. But though we never got to Carey Reach, standing forlornly just outside the tiny, tucked-away village of Priory St. Giles, I had been pretending for years, ever since I first heard of it, that I knew precisely what it looked like. A game of make-believe had become my favorite and secret source of entertainment. Perhaps it was because I was a highly imaginative child as well as a lonely one. Or it might have been because I was determined, half consciously, half subconsciously, to identify myself with father's interests, to integrate myself with father and his Tudor world, to become part of his world rather than admit to myself that I was left out of it. And so, almost every night after I was in bed, I would frame our house, and I chose to call Carey Reach long before father had actually owned it, with its appropriate land and seascapes, and then I would hurry on to the furnishing of it. My ready access to father's library, to shelf after shelf of the superb collector's items, with hundreds of colored plates that were his pride and joy and his chief extravagance, made it a simple enough thing to do. Father was good without answering questions too, if I chose the moment carefully and didn't make a nuisance of myself with interruptions. By the time I was 12 years old, I had already become something of a purist, a perfectionist on the subject of period of architecture, and more especially of period house decor. I only lowered my precocious standard once, and that was to indulge in a shamed weakness for Victorian china dogs and lambs. Briefly, I allowed a pair of each in a Staffordshire ware to stand on an imagined mantel at Carey Reach. Those sweet, sweet lambs deep in grass and flowers. Those adorable curly-eared dogs with black noses and gold padlock chains around their necks. It was a wrench to see them take down. One room in particular at Carey Reach had always fascinated me, the octagon room. From the moment father first told me, our house contained an 8-sided bedchamber, doubtless to console me for its lack of a dungeon or moat, and had drawn me a little sketch of it. I was enthralled, bound to it, its captive. And from the first, there was never any question in my mind as to where the sole possession of the octagon room lay. It was mine, entirely mine. No one knew, of course, that I had pre-emptied it or how real it was for me. I had never told anyone about my game, and father was the last one to guess. To him, my intense interest in selecting suitable, absolutely correct furnishing for Carey Reach, if he were even aware of it, was no more, I am certain, than a natural interest any girl child might have in the arrangement of a favorite dollhouse. Once he did please me enormously and unexpectedly. I had slipped into the library, and I was looking along the shelves as quietly as I could, so that I wouldn't be sent away. And he glanced from his desk. "Be a good child, will you, and put down the middle window shade an inch or two, the sun is in my eyes. Did you know it's giving you a regular halo? You'd have felt at home in the old days at Carey Reach. I shouldn't wonder, Anne, with that red hair of yours. It's a family heritage, you know, that they say it skips a generation now and then. That night, when I went to bed, I brushed and brushed my hair with the silver brush that had been my mother's. And then, with it hanging loose below my waist, bright against the white of my little girl nightdress, I pirouetted in front of the mirror. I was proud of my Carey birthright. I'm just like the others, I whispered to my mirror. Just like the other people who used to live in our house. Our house, in the middle of our street. Our house, it's our house. It is my house now. My house, get out. Devilitized? Devitalized? Devitalized. There we go. Why? Was it all Father's fault that my girlhood had been somehow sapped? Somehow dividitized?